Hi guys and welcome back. I thought on this video I'd talk about my very first Mac. It was a 2010 11.5 inch MacBook Air. It was the first Mac that I ever bought. Before that I was working on PC and I didn't really give much of a thought about what I was working on each day, but something somewhere inside of me knew that I wanted to work on a Mac, and for some reason I went and bought this. This is the actual one. This is my very first Mac. I've still got it. Unfortunately, I gave away the power cord to a friend, so it doesn't power up, but it does still work and it's in good conditions, I think you can see. And I thought, as I'm waiting for the new M2 MacBook Air to turn up this week, it would be good fun if we just look back at this. What was its spec back then and how it performed for me and what kind of things I got up to on it, and of course, where it's led me to. Do you know, I remember ever so clearly going in and buying this Mac. It was a Monday in June, and I tell you I remember it so clearly. It was WWDC, and all the guys in the store were watching the event. Anyway, I bought this Mac and got it home, and there was a problem, which I'll come to in a moment. But when I was looking at the specs of this Mac, it just shows you how things have gone on at pace. 2 gigs of RAM. This had just 2 gigs and 128 gigs of storage, and that is what caused the problem. I got it home that first evening, and my iTunes library wouldn't fit on it. You can imagine, my first Mac, and I was absolutely devastated. Luckily, the guys were really helpful. They said, look, just get an external drive. We can direct your iTunes library onto that external drive. So that sorted that out. It meant, okay, I had to carry that drive with me all the time and have it plugged in. But apart from that, that was problem solved. The port layout was actually pretty good. You had a USB 2 port on either side. You've got MagSafe, headphone jack, and also a display port as well. So the port situation was actually really, really good. It's got an 11.5 inch screen. I say, unfortunately, I can't power it up because I've given the power supply cable away. But it's got the 11.5 inch glossy LED screen. And when I saw that screen all those years ago, honestly, it was the best screen that I'd ever seen. I last used this about a year ago. And even now, the display looks pretty good. It's the widescreen. And actually, it looks really good still. And certainly back then, I was blown away by it. That's why I love this Mac so much. When I picked this up out of store, it was running OS X 10 Snow Leopard, and it also had with it, let's see if you remember this, the iLife suite. Do you remember that? GarageBand and iMovie, all those fun and games. The first movie I ever tried to edit, or video I ever tried to edit, was on this Mac, believe it or not, with its 2 gigs of RAM in iMovie. Needless to say, it wasn't too successful, but at least it sort of broke the duck and got me into it. And the battery life at the time seemed to be reasonable. Around about 3 or 4 hours. I think the spec said today when I was looking at it up to 5 hours that it could handle, but I don't ever remember it doing it 5 hours. But even if it did, the MacBook Air I'm about to get this week has got around about 20 hours on it. So it's gone from 5 hours in 2010 up to 20 hours of battery life in 2022. Technology, eh? You've got to love it. So as I said, I came from PCs when I bought this. I wasn't really doing anything creative at the time. I was just doing office work, but somewhere deep inside me knew I wanted to work on a Mac. And that was a really fortuitous point in my life, because if I hadn't just decided to buy a Mac for whatever reason, I wouldn't have got into all of the creative elements that I'm into now. I wouldn't have got into audio production with podcasts. I wouldn't have got into video production that I'm doing now for YouTube. I wouldn't have started my business, creative design business. And I wouldn't have been using the Adobe suite. I wouldn't have been using InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop. Of course, Photoshop I use every day for the thumbnails for these videos. So just that one little bit of fate of me wanting to get a Mac changed everything for me. But it's interesting, having come from a PC, as I say, it was the fact that I actually didn't know how to use a Mac. Gone at the start menu in the bottom corner, and of course, loading up with antivirus, a big, fat, chunky plastic keyboard, all of those things had gone. I had this lovely shiny machine. I just didn't know what to do with it. So I remember for the first couple of months, I went to the Genius Bar every Sunday morning. I took my daughter with me then. She was young, probably bored even then, but she came with me. And I went there and I just learned how to use a Mac. I put myself out and said, I really don't know what I'm doing. So I learned how to use Pages, Numbers, Keynote. We looked at GarageBand. And there's a funny story that I remembered this morning as I was writing a blog about this actually. And the guys at the Genius Bar said that they were always intimidated by me, because I used to come back the following week with notes about what I needed to learn this week to make sure I use my hour in the most productive way possible. I guess I was even an Apple geek all those years ago. So as you know, I'm waiting for the brand new M2 MacBook Air to turn up, but I thought that was a good point to look back at my Mac history after this, where things went. So this was my very first Mac, which was 2010. I think a year or two after that, I got a 21.5 inch iMac, which I still have tucked away in a closet. I think after that, it was the 27-inch iMac. You can't quite see out of frame. You've heard me talk about the 27-inch iMac a whole load, and you would have seen it in some of my videos behind me as well. Then I bought, I think, was my first MacBook Pro, which got stolen. I seem to recall that was a 2016, 2017 15-inch Intel MacBook Pro. I replaced that with a 2019 MacBook Pro, obviously still Intel. Same year, I got something for the desk as well. I've got that 21.5-inch iMac. And then this year, of course, I've recently bought the M1 Max MacBook Pro and a studio display. And soon to add to that, I'm going to have the M2 MacBook Air, which I'm really juiced. I can't wait to get my hands on it and see what it's all about. Isn't it odd? I'm sure I'm not alone in this, that Macs come to mean something to you. Remember the point of life you were at when you had them. This one, you can understand why it means so much to me, because it was my very first. But the other Mac that means the world to me is the 27-inch iMac, because that's been with me and done so much for me over the last 7 years that it just can't be replaced. These two are never going to go anywhere. That 27-inch saw me through the pandemic, so I was locked at home with it. And I think I was my only Mac at home at the time, so we were together for 18 months. It saw me through, and my mum passed away as well. I designed her order of service on it. It's just got so many memories, so many reasons I can't get rid of that Mac. And it was the reason that my graphic design business grew as well. All of that was carried out on that iMac. But let me know, are there any Macs that you've got that just mean the world to you? You still got locked away in a closet. As I say, this one at the moment won't even power up. I could buy another charger, and I might do that, and it would still fire up. I know it would, because I was using it, as I say, a couple of years ago just to switch on, and I think I was playing music on it, funnily enough. But if there's any Macs that mean the world to you, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what your Mac journey's been and what Macs mean the most to you and why. So fingers crossed, at least, the new M2 MacBook Air should be with me this coming Friday. And what I've decided to do is bring it here. Back at home in the studio, as you know, I've got the M1 Max MacBook Pro and the studio display. So I'm going to use the M2 here as a daily machine. It'll be my daily driver. It will run the business here and do some video editing here as well. What I've decided to do is to mirror the screen from the M2 over to the 27-inch 5K display of that iMac. And that way, I've still got that big display to work on. It's still part of my daily life as well, which means the world to me. But of course, the heart of it, the brains of it, will be the brand new M2 chip. Now, I'm going to bring a video file in with me, and I'm going to export it on the quad-core i7 iMac and see how long it takes on there, and use that same file and then run it on the M2 base model MacBook Air. 7 years apart, I bet you it is going to be shocking. I'll let you know when I've done it what the difference in times are. But I think that technology is really going to show us how far it's come in those 7 years. This was a pretty well spec'd out iMac, and it's going to suffer and struggle by comparison to a base model M2 MacBook Air. With the M2, I did want to increase the storage on it, but as you know, if you watched the video last week, I couldn't do it because you can only order the base configurations for delivery this coming Friday. And I wanted to get my hands on one and give you my thoughts. I've got obviously Intel, I've got M1 Max. It'd be really interesting to see how the base level M2 MacBook Air with 512 gigs of storage on actually works. It sounds like that choice of 512 gigs of storage has been a good shout, because all these problems at the moment that people are talking about on the M2 chip are on the smaller 256 gigs. So fingers crossed, I've made a good choice there. So guys, don't forget to let me know what Macs you've got that you would never consider getting rid of, why they mean so much to you, and what the emotional journey has been. Let me know what Macs you've had. Get involved and leave me some comments on this video. Also, when the new M2 MacBook Air hopefully turns up this Friday, is there anything you would like me to be hands-on for you? If you haven't been to the store yet, but you're thinking of buying one, or any really basic questions you would like me to answer about the new M2 MacBook Air in midnight. There will be a video on Friday. I'm not quite sure what time it will go out. It kind of depends what time Mr. DHL comes knocking at my door, but I'll be giving you my first reactions to the brand new M2 MacBook Air. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's just a real catch up on my journey through to where I'm at now, waiting for the new M2 MacBook Air to turn up. It's been a long journey, but I wouldn't have changed a thing. If you enjoyed this, hang around for just a few more minutes, because there's a video coming up talking about how I paired up the Apple Studio display and the M1 Max MacBook Pro. Speak to you soon. I'll speak to you Friday, in fact.